Bernie Sanders does indeed have a sordid past with campaign finance and the misuse of taxpayer funds, as I see it. I got to be careful about how I phrase this. But many people have been wondering, where does all that money go? I decided to look into it. And as it turns out, for the most part, there's no grand nefarious plot by Bernie Sanders to siphon off campaign funds for himself, or as far as I can tell, even the DNC. It's likely that some of that money may go to the DNC. Bernie Sanders gave the DNC $100,000 in 2017, but that had something to do with some kind of tour event he did with Tom Perez. Well, the meme right now is no refunds. Well, actually, people are getting refunds. So sorry to spoil the meme for all of you. Bernie Sanders is indeed giving refunds like any other campaign. Now, I asked on Twitter, what happens to all that money that Bernie Sanders raised in the past couple of months now that he's dropped out of the presidential race? I got over 1,000 responses, and most people said a fourth mansion, another house. You get the joke. So I decided to dig into this. The bigger question I had was not, look, you can't legally take campaign funds to buy a house. So I didn't think that was possible, was likely what was occurring. There was some speculation that he hired his wife to do so. You know, his wife worked for a company that he contracted, was essentially paying her out of campaign funds. Now, as far as I can tell right now, I don't believe I have any information to claim that's true. But Bernie Sanders does have some stuff in his past. He's created, well, let's just put it this way, nepotism. Bernie Sanders is not special. He's given his wife special benefits and used taxpayer funds in ways most people would find unethical. When it comes to his campaign, it seems like he's on the up and up. My bigger question is whether or not that money would be funneled to the DNC. Joe Biden has raised very little money, all right, relative to Bernie Sanders at least. Bernie Sanders raised around like $100 million more than Joe Biden did, which makes me wonder, could it possibly be that the true goal of Bernie Sanders' campaign was to attract progressive money to then funnel off to Democratic causes? I don't believe I can definitively answer that as a yes, but I think there is a residual benefit from Bernie Sanders' fundraising campaigning into the Democratic Party, considering Joe Biden has sort of tacitly endorsed Joe Biden. He stopped short of saying it was a full-throated endorsement when he was talking to Stephen Colbert, but you get the point. Let's get started, and I want to show you this story first from CNN. Bernie Sanders raised massive $46.5 million in February, campaign announces. This is from March 1st, 2020. And I'm wondering, where does all that money go? That's a lot of money. Certainly he can't spend all of it. Some people have speculated that what he does is he raises all this money, and then he hires a company where he enriches his friends and his family, that they get a commission on all that money raised and then run ads. So the money is accounted for by the FEC, meaning it's spent legitimately, but that he gives benefits to his buddies who run the job like most government people do. I can't speak to that. I can't speak to what he's done in this cycle, but I can show you this story from The Atlantic. This is from March. It's called, let me just show you the title. The Sanders and Biden families have been cashing in for years. Joe Biden likes to say he's the poorest man in the Senate. Bernie Sanders rails against the establishment, but family members have long benefited from the Democratic frontrunners' political careers. Take a look at this section. Jane and Sanders, so Jane is his wife, were living together while he was approving her paychecks after paying her $4,900 in 1982, about $13,000 today. The mayor put her on what became a $21,000 annual salary, about $54,000 in today's money, accounting for inflation. As part of a formal 7-person expansion of the city staff, her position, quote, was not advertised and no applicants were considered aside from her, according to Sanders, the Burlington Free Press reported in 1985. They say, quote, for a man who once proclaimed himself an enemy of patronage, Mayor Bernard Sanders has done a remarkable turnaround on the issue in a relatively short time, the Free Press complained in a 1983 editorial. That same year, Sanders responded, I'm tired of hearing innuendo, especially regarding Jane, he said. If she is not competent to do the job, I want to hear someone say it. Cronyism is hiring people for specific jobs because they are friends and not because they are qualified. If someone can explain to me that Jane is not qualified for the job, I'll listen to them. No, I don't care, Bernie. Nepotism is hiring your friends and family members for the jobs, period. And if it's true what the Burlington Free Press reported, that he created a position, was not advertising it, and no applicants were considered to give to his wife to get the equivalent of $54,000 a year, you do not get any special favors simply because the amount of corruption you engaged in was a smaller number than, say, Joe Biden or Donald Trump. If you want to complain about Trump hiring his kids and his friends and his family members for government positions, look, I don't care. That's fine. Criticize the guy. I don't care. He gets no special favors from me. Now, I will be fair. I think the meme about Bernie Sanders not giving refunds and smuggling away millions of dollars, as far as I can tell, is dubious. Has Bernie Sanders engaged in crony nepotism type behavior in the past? It would seem so. Does that mean that he's doing it today? I don't necessarily think so, though he has been accused of that repeatedly over the past few years. Of course, Bernie Sanders supporters will tell you that it's just a smear from the establishment. Fine, whatever. We do see smears from the establishment to Bernie Sanders a lot, as well as Donald Trump. So take it with a grain of salt. Vanity Fair reported Bernie Sanders accused of using campaign money to benefit family. Vanity Fair is a lefty publication, mind you. This story is from January of 2016. They say a new report suggests that Democratic presidential candidate Senator Bernie Sanders and his wife have repeatedly done the most socialist thing ever, funnel thousands of campaign and nonprofit dollars towards family members and friends. According to an investigation by the right-leaning Washington Free Beacon, Sanders' spouse of 27 years, Jane O'Meara Sanders, and his stepdaughter, Karina Driscoll, both drew sizable salaries from Sanders' House campaigns between 2004 and 2004. Public records examined by the online paper reportedly saw O'Meara Sanders was paid more than $90,000 for consulting and ad placement services between 2002 and 2004, while Driscoll received $65,000 from the campaign over the course of 4 years. But while it's not unheard of for campaigns to bring family members on board, the Free Beacon's revelations about Sanders' wife's tenure as the president of Burlington College will certainly raise eyebrows. During her time there, the college paid nearly $500,000 to the Vermont woodworking school run by Driscoll for classes, according to the Free Beacon. The college also reportedly paid tens of thousands of dollars to an all-inclusive Caribbean resort run by Jonathan Leopold, the son of a family friend, for a study abroad program. Between 2009 and 2011, when O'Meara Sanders stepped down, Burlington College paid around $68,000 to the resort. The Free Beacon reports that payments to both the woodworking school and the resort stopped soon after she left. All right. If you want to accuse Bernie Sanders of all these things, I'm listening. If you want to accuse Trump, Biden, anybody else, absolutely. I've criticized Biden relentlessly over this, and Donald Trump gets no special favors. I've reported several times when he had the military staying at resorts in the UK. And look, it is what it is. Is Bernie Sanders doing this? Let me tell you what I see here. Bernie Sanders is playing the same game as everybody else, hiring friends and family members through public taxpayer funds. If you run a private business and you want to hire your son, brother, or whatever, that's fine. And that's what Trump did with his private businesses. I'm not a big fan of Trump appointing family members to government positions, which he's been doing, and the benefits they will receive. I'm also not going to let Joe Biden get a pass when he flies his son to China on Air Force Two or whatever it was that happened, and the whole Burisma thing. Bernie Sanders gets no special passes for any of the criticism. Bernie Sanders does the same thing. The difference? He's not playing with, billions of dollars. He's playing with hundreds of thousands. I don't care if it's $1 or $1 million. If you're taking taxpayer funds to pay your buddies and your friends and your family members, you're not going to see me, celebrating that. Now, one interesting thing we saw is in Politico, they reported the since ended presidential campaigns of Bloomberg, Warren, Pete Buttigieg, and Amy Klobuchar all filed as well. A quick read over their filings. It wasn't a lack of fundraising that likely pushed any of these candidates out of the race because they all outraised Biden. Where does all of that money go? My bigger concern is whether or not Biden, a non-viable candidate, was receiving donations or campaigns from other groups because they raise all this money and then afterwards dump it to the DNC, which then goes towards Biden, who's not viable. It's effectively taking the support for candidates who people like and dumping it on top of Biden, who nobody likes, and I have to wonder why they would do that. Now, according to Bernie Sanders' filings, this is going back to 2016, and we can clearly see, I'm sorry, I know it's a meme, and the graphic is funny with Bernie running away with all the money. But according to these filings, yes, while Bernie may be paying friends and family members, and you can dig through that, and it's likely true, we've seen it in the past, he is giving refunds. He's given $5.2 million in refunds for the 2016 campaign, and that accounts his expenditures. It looks like he's actually down a bit of money. According to Elite Daily, Bernie Sanders used his excess campaign funds to send delegates to the DNC, which apparently he didn't need to do. I don't know. He raised in contributions $231 million. He spent $226 million and refunded $5.2 million. So it does seem like he is down a little bit. His campaign might have had some debt. We can then jump to the 2020 cycle, which only just ended, and see that he raised $168 million. He brought in money from other campaigns, which was around $12 million. That may have come from his past campaigns. I'm not entirely sure. But he did issue $1.86 million in refunds. I can't tell you what Bernie Sanders is doing with all of his money. My bigger question is whether or not the money was going from Bernie to the DNC. I can't find anything for now that shows that. So that's my only real concern. The reason I bring this up is that some people are concerned Bernie was essentially a trap. Progressives wouldn't support Biden or the DNC, so they use Bernie Sanders to raise exorbitant amounts of money he can then funnel into Democratic causes. I'd be curious to see how many of the ads put out by Bernie were not necessarily pro-Bernie, but just pro-Democrat in general or anti-Trump, in which case his ads greatly benefited the DNC. After Bernie Sanders lost in 2016, he endorsed Hillary Clinton and everyone got mad. And once again, he's now throwing his support behind Biden to a certain degree. He said on Colbert that he's going to talk with him and we'll see how things turn out. So one thing you can walk away from, I mean, by all means, go and investigate, see what you find. One thing I'm not concerned with is whether or not Bernie will issue refunds. Of course, like any campaign, he will. The question I have is, can we actually track where the money's going? Who's benefiting from it? Where this money will end up at the end of everything? Because it looks like he still has some money left over. My question is, will Bernie Sanders use that money to support Joe Biden in any way, directly or indirectly? I'll leave it there. The best assessment I can come up with is Bernie, of course, issues refunds. He can't use the money to buy houses. It's a silly joke. He's got extra houses, but he's definitely getting very wealthy off of all of the campaigning. And we're talking about a lot of money. I guess we'll see who it benefits in the long run. I'll leave it there. Stick around. I got a couple more segments for you coming up in a few minutes, and I will see you all shortly.